Hi, this is Carl Leopson at the University of Arizona, and I'm the instructor for SERP 409 and 509, Foundations of High Incidence Disabilities. And this is going to be a brief introduction to some of the graduate elements of the course. But let's start here. There are 14 categories of disability in IDEA. There are 4 of those categories that make up the high incidence disability categories, or the categories in which about 70% of students with disabilities will be found. And that is specific learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, emotional disturbance, and other health impairments. The category of speech and language impairments is also large, but you'll find that in special education we don't spend a lot of time specifically focusing on speech and language impairments. That's largely covered by speech and language therapists, and for other reasons that you'll also see when we look at demographics in a couple class sessions from now. So this course is all about an introduction to those categories that make up the high incidence disability areas. So we're going to do a couple things. I want you to know the best way to get in touch with me. We'll talk briefly about the course expectations, although you have an assignment for that online. We'll take a look at the major graded assignments for the course. We'll talk a little bit about the online material, and we'll talk about the timeline for taking quizzes. So let's we have reviewed some objectives. I'll introduce myself. We'll look at the course expectations, do syllabus review, and look at assignments. So I started out as a classroom teacher of kids with emotional and behavioral disorders. You can actually read a little bit more about my history in the discussion section, in which we're all to introduce ourselves, of all of us folks who are taking this course online. But I taught in large districts, small districts, often taught kids with violent and assaultive behavior. I went back to the University of Kentucky to get my master's degree, and then I worked for 6 years as a behavioral consultant to a school district, Scott County Schools in Kentucky. And I received my master's degree from the University of Kentucky in assistive technology, or selecting assistive and adaptive devices for children and adults with disabilities. I got my doctoral degree from the University of Kentucky, good place to go to school. And they actually had some of the best and brightest in my particular chosen area of interest, which was student behavior. I was lucky enough to be a research associate on the initial rollout of the federal effort to do positive behavioral interventions and supports. It's now PBIS. And then I came here to the University of Arizona, and I've been here for about 12 years. And I'm the director of cross-categorical programs, and I am the unit special education chair, and I love it here. I love it here. I've traveled all over the world, and I really do love Tucson, Arizona. So that's me. Please introduce yourself in the section, the discussion section for introductions. Post some pictures if you would. Maybe even a short video. That would be great, because I miss not getting to see you. The pictures help because then when I bump into you in the elevator, I can actually say hello instead of not knowing who you are. That happens all the time. You wouldn't believe it. Course expectations. We'll learn more about this when at the end of the course, when we talk about positive behavioral interventions and supports, and if you have some other courses with me, or if you want to study it more in depth, feel free to set up an independent study with me also. If you're taking the set of behavioral intervention courses, you'll get more about positive behavioral interventions and supports and the positive behavior supports model. But one of the more important things is classroom expectations. And the classroom expectations I have for this class are that you be prepared, you be active, and you be respectful. In other words, I want you to par the course, right? This is the same kind of activity that you should do as a teacher with students in your classroom, to come up with a simple set of rules, positively stated, and figure out what they mean in every environment in the school or in every situation. So for us, when you do the discussion activity on classroom expectations, I'd like you to think about what are things you could do to be prepared in class. What are some things you could do to be prepared between classes? What are some things you could do to be active online? What are some things you could do to be respectful online? It's having a short, simple set of expectations or rules for kids and explaining what they mean in every environment that is the foundation for positive behavioral interventions and supports. Here we go. So let's take a look at the graduate syllabus and some of the graduate material. I have no idea why these came into Prezi in a funky way, but they certainly did. But you can get the syllabus online, and one of the course activities actually is to read the syllabus for this week. This phone number is my office number, but it also rings through to my private cell. So if you need to get hold of me, you can get hold of me there. That's if you really need to talk to me. Most of the time, an email is the absolute best way to get in touch with me. The course starts on the 26th. I'm actually going to open it a few days early. Runs through December 9th, but you guys will be finished before that. Okay? About a week before that. Let's take a look at some of the course activities. So required learning activities, that you complete the readings and the homework assignments, that you participate in the discussion sections, that you do the weekly quizzes, that you get a passing grade on the final exam, and that you get a passing grade on your research synthesis writing project. So the major things you're graded on here are discussion sections, and there are at least 10 assignments requiring you to participate online. And you'll be in groups of 3 to 4, and sometimes you'll be actually tossed in with the undergraduates into some small discussion groups online, and sometimes you'll just be with other graduate students, and I'll let you know when that's happening. Each post is worth 3 points, and it's really kind of like an attendance grade for you who are taking this course online. And I just base your discussion posts on their basis of content, clarity, and grammar. So use decent grammar. State what you're going to state clearly. And I look to see that it's on track with what the discussion post is supposed to be about. Weekly quizzes. There are 2 types of quizzes every week. There's a class quiz and a reading quiz. Class quiz is over something that some presentation you've watched or something I've asked you to do in this online class during the week. And then the reading quiz is a quiz on one or more readings that I'll ask you to do every week. There are probably going to be 12 quizzes that are reading quizzes and 12 quizzes that are class quizzes. I may drop one or two. We'll see as the semester goes on. Usually there are small changes, but I try not to make any changes that provide you with any more work. The research synthesis paper is one of the big items. Okay, the research synthesis paper is worth 50 points, and it's a paper that allows you to write in depth on a particular subject, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. I expect it to be about 4,000 words, about 8 pages, double spaced. Good APA format, kind of synthesizing 3 research articles in one subject area, and I grade that using a rubric. It says on grammar, content, and synthesis. And then there's the final exam, and the comprehensive final exam in here is worth 50 points. It's short essay questions, pretty much taken from the weekly quizzes, right? So if you do, what we do in here is I try to provide a model for what we should be doing with students in special education. I'm going to give you objectives every week. I'm going to give you content that helps you lead toward completion of those objectives. I'll help you review those objectives by having you take a weekly quiz. And then at the end, we have the summative evaluation, which is the final exam, right? So there's formative evaluation all along the way, which is the weekly quizzes, so that I know if I've done a decent job teaching or if I need to reteach. And then there's the summative evaluation, which is the final exam. Okay? And actually, as you can see, the weekly quizzes all totaled together are worth more than a final exam, and frankly, I think, in my mind, that's the way it ought to be. Let's take a look at what some of the things we're going to learn here in the schedule of class sessions. You've got a couple things to get done the first 2 weeks so that you are on the same schedule as the undergrads. You kind of have to finish the first 2 weeks of class in the first week. Does that make sense? It's not a whole lot to get done. But that is because the undergraduate students, when they show up for class, they're assigned certain things to complete across a week. And those are the same things that you should be doing during that week. Okay. So the things that they have that are upcoming are the things that you are going to be current on. Because if they have a reading that's due for the next class, where we're going to discuss it, that is actually the reading you'll be reading that week. And so that gives you the opportunity, and the undergraduate students, the opportunity to comment in the discussion boards at the same time on those articles or those items. All right? So this schedule lists the date, the start date for release of material, and the due date. And it runs over a weekend, and so I like to have that built in for folks online, so that it starts on a Tuesday, ends on a Tuesday. Okay, so that gives you time. You could do it anytime during that week, fit it in, finish it up on the weekend, and be ready for the next week. Okay. Introduction and syllabus, simple stuff. And then overview and history and high incidence demographics and perceptions. Some online pieces to do. Okay, and there's a reading quiz and a class quiz. And there are 2 readings. There is a reading on person first language, and there's a reading on inclusion. And then you take the reading quiz. Right. The next week will be about issues in assessment and lesson planning. The week after that is about curriculum and instruction. See, first we start out talking about kids with disabilities as numbers here, and then a little bit about them as people. We start to talk about some issues of instruction of kids, and then we get to specifics of different categories in IDEA. So intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, behavioral disorders, physical disabilities. Then we back out and we take a very broad characteristics approach, which is what are the characteristics of kids who end up in these categories in terms of their cognition and their perception and their language. And what are their learning characteristics, and we'll talk a little instructional theory. And what are their social emotional characteristics. And then we round up the class with some general classroom management procedures for kids in high incidence categories. And we talk about positive behavioral supports and RTI. You can see along the way I've listed the assignments, I've listed the due dates, and then also along the way we are going to slowly build this synthesis paper by making notes about it in discussion sections. Right? This is not going to be a situation where I'm simply going to remind you 2 weeks before the end of the semester that the synthesis paper is due. We're going to work on it across the whole semester. You get me a topic pretty early. You're going to get me ref articles that you want to use, and I'll approve them. We'll look at them together. We'll see if they work. If not, we'll get you something else. You will post your outline and notes in the discussion section so that your peers can comment on it. Then you'll write a draft, and you will share it with one of your peers, and one of your peers will share their draft with you, and you will grade each other's or rate each other's drafts. You will give each other feedback to improve your paper. You'll rewrite, and you'll do that one more time, and then your paper is finally due. By that time, your paper is going to be great, right? What I want to do with this is model the writing process that we ought to be doing with students in schools. By the time we get to college, we forget to model the writing process. And I think that's something we ought to do more often. So now let's take a quick look at quizzes, the class quizzes and the reading quizzes, because I know you're going to take these every week. It's probably of some concern to you. What I really want to do with both class quizzes and reading quizzes is model frequent measurement. It's really important that we model frequent measurement for students with disabilities, for all students, frankly. And so here's the format for how all this comes together. I'll give you objectives in class. We'll cover that content. We'll have some reading, discussion, or participation activity. There'll be a quiz online about that material. It's open at the beginning of the week or on Tuesday. It'll be graded during the week, and then it stays open, and you go back and fix it and get it right if you want. Right? If you get anything wrong, I just leave it open and you fix it, and I go back and grade it again until you get it all right. Because the goal here is for you to get it right. One of the real goals for frequent measurement is for me to know what you got right and what you understand and what you don't, and whether I've done a good job in teaching. And so simply grading you on it and making it completely your responsibility doesn't make any sense at all. Right? So here's an example. One of the objectives this week is identify a variety of methods for contacting the instructor. We covered that when we reviewed the syllabus, right? I said I gave you my office number, which also rings through to my cell phone, but really the best way to get in touch with me is by email. And so there is going to be a quiz question that's for this week for the class quiz that says what is the best way to contact the instructor, and what if you need to have a face-to-face discussion. The best way to contact me is by email, and if you need to have a face-to-face discussion, you call me and you make an appointment. It's that simple. The quizzes are going to be easy because of the way we organize them, and it should be that way if you organize things well for kids with disabilities too. Right? Again, for the reading quizzes, it's a model of frequent assessment, frequent measurement and assessment. There is no textbook, right? So we're just going to use relevant practitioner sources and articles that are available online. I want you to learn what those are and where to go find good materials, and it's also a good model for professional development. I also want you to read what people say instead of what people say that people say. Right? I want you to read it directly from them as often as we can. Okay. And this will follow the same format. The readings will be available starting early in the week. Use the quiz online. It stays open. You can fix it. Oh, this one says it does not stay open. They're going to stay open. Don't worry about it. So here's another example. Reflect on a topic of interest in the syllabus. One of the goals this week is to read the syllabus. The topics are in the syllabus, and then what looks interesting to you in the syllabus and why. And there's going to be a quiz question on the reading quiz for this week that says, find a topic of interest in the syllabus. Why is it interesting to you? You provide an answer. It shows me that you've done the reading. It shows me whether or not the reading is appropriate. And that's of more interest to me later on in the semester as we go through different readings. All right. That's it for quizzes. Quizzes are easy, guys. There's lots of them, and they're worth a lot of points. But it's actually one of the things that when most students finish this course and I get their course evaluations, what they often comment on is that they've never had weekly quizzes before, but they found that really, really useful. All right, now let's take a look at one of the next important pieces of the course, which is the research synthesis article, or the research article review. Right, so the goal for this assignment is to extend your knowledge in a specific area that you're interested in, to develop your writing skills, and to model good writing practices. Right? So I want you to be able to dig deeper into one of these high incidence categories and one particular issue. One of the things we're going to learn about, for instance, is that the category of other health impairments has ballooned into a large category because of the inclusion of students with ADHD. Let's say you're interested in interventions for students with ADHD. That could be the focus of a paper. All right. I want you to look as narrowly as possible at some good writing and some good research and pull it together. So here's how it works. It's worth 50 points. You select, it says A journal articles. That's a terrible writing. You select journal articles. You select 3 of them. And they should be about something in the area of high incidence disabilities. Along the way, in the discussion sections, you'll show me the articles and your peers, and tell us what the focus of your research is about. You'll provide an outline, you'll do drafts, and then you'll provide the final. And it's about 5 to 7 to 8 double-spaced pages. I'm pretty loose on that. And it is graded by rubric, right? And I'm really looking for quality writing. I'm looking that you summarize each of the articles, and I'm looking that it all hangs together. Okay. The variety of articles and journals that you can use, and one of the things we do as a welcome activity in this course, so one of the things you'll do this week is to go into the University Library system, online system, and learn how to search for journal articles. You'll find an article, you'll pull it out, and you'll provide the abstract and the title of the article in a discussion post. So we're starting out right away to help you find journal pieces. And we'll be reading journal articles all throughout this course. I would really like you could use one of the articles that we read, if you say it was kind of the genesis for your interest in a particular area. But I'd like you to actually find your own information, right? Let's say you wanted to find information about, you were really interested in ADHD and its influence in kids with behavior problems. That's a nice narrow topic. I'm sure you all have your own interests, and you're all here for different reasons. This gives you an opportunity to dig deeper into that area for which you really have an interest. So very specifically, as far as the format of the paper goes, I'm going to be looking for APA style. If you're not familiar with APA, there are lots of websites that will help you do it. 1-inch margins all around, 12-point type, double-spaced. Right. And then the format. Now this is really up for grabs. I could be convinced of something else, but this is the classic format. Okay. You have an introduction to your topic that takes a couple paragraphs. Maybe 2, maybe 3 paragraphs. The introduction to your topic should probably be more than a paragraph. Right? You kind of lay things out. You lay about the general issue. Then you talk about some of the pros and cons or things people have said across that issue. You say something about why it's important. There's 3 paragraphs right there. And then you say, the purpose of this paper is to review 3 research articles that provide insights into this topic. Okay? Then you do a review of the first article. That should probably take 3 to 4 paragraphs, because you're going to tell me about who wrote the article. You're going to talk about who the subjects were, what they were trying to do with the article, how they did it, and what the findings were. Then you're going to do that for the next article, and for the next article, and then you are going to synthesize. So you're going to have 2 to 3 synthesis topics in which you not just compare across these articles. So at the end you say these were similar in certain ways or different in certain ways, but I'd like you to even step it up further than that as graduate student and synthesize. Talk about how taken together, what do these mean, right? If you find 3 articles that talk about the fact that kids with ADHD have higher incidences of behavior problems in schools, that's really interesting. If you find out, though, that these 3 articles suggest that they have higher incidence of behavior for different reasons, well, that's also interesting. Okay, so you can talk about that. You can talk about the impact of that, what do we need to do more of, what's missing in these articles. I want you to take a really scholarly approach to this. And then a summary. So you can see how all of that together is probably going to add up to, I'd say, more than 5 pages, 7 to 8 pages probably. Right? And this is so this is a classic format. If you want to do it differently, if you want to talk about the articles together as you go, let me know. If you want to do something that might be a little more sophisticated than this format, but this format works really well. So this is the overall format for doing the research synthesis paper. And if you have any questions about that, you'll have plenty of time to ask along the way. So let's review really quickly. In this session, we went over the objectives for the session. I introduced myself. We talked about course expectations. We did a review of the syllabus and some of the finer points of the syllabus. And now we're reviewing again, and we'll talk about assignments in just a second. So, to review, identify a variety of methods for contacting an instructor. Best way to get in touch with me is by email. If you need to talk to me on the phone, then I gave you my office number, which also rings through to my cell. And if you need to see me face to face and you live in town, don't just show up at my office, because it's likely I won't be there. Set up an appointment. I'm out and about and I'm working. Okay. So when given a situation, apply the course expectations. There's a whole assignment for you to do on that in the discussion section. Name the major graded assignments for the course. Right? So you've got discussions that are worth 3 points. You've got quizzes, both class quizzes and reading quizzes. You've got the synthesis paper, which is worth 50 points. And you got the final exam that's worth 50 points. And the final exam really is a summative that pulls together from quiz questions. It kind of combines quiz questions to ask you a little bit broader questions by combining some of those quiz questions. Being able to locate online material, I'll leave that to you to get into D2L and poke around. There's also one of the welcome activities for this week is to find out something new about D2L that you didn't know before. They're always changing it. There's always something new and interesting and useful, actually, in D2L. It's a lot better system than it used to be. And finally, describe the timeline for taking quizzes. Quizzes will open for you on Tuesdays, and they'll end the following Tuesday. And I'll grade them. I'll be checking during the week, and I'll try to have them all graded by that next Tuesday. If you miss anything in the quizzes, you can go back in and fix it, and I'll regrade them. Because the goal for the quizzes is for me to figure out what you don't know, and then for you to actually learn it and get it right. So, several things for you guys to do to get ready for next week. You want to do the welcome activities. You are not choosing groups and self-enrolling because you are writing papers. The students, the undergraduate students, do a in-class presentation about research articles. Instead, I have you guys writing about them. There is a reading on person-first language. There's an online activity on perceptions, and there's a class activity on the demographics of students with disabilities. Again, look forward to having you in the class. I think it's going to be a good one. Get in touch with me if you have any questions.